Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. If I could get someone in the chat to let us know that you can see and hear us okay, that would be great. We always want to make sure that things are working. See if we could get a quick comment in the YouTube chat. Anybody? Bueller?
The one person watching, if they could.
Okay, yeah, there's probably some latency. Oh, there we go. All right, yeah, so there's some latency with the live stream and people's ability to respond. So all good. Excellent. So with that, let me switch over my screen and we'll go through some boilerplate. So I'll share a monitor.
Some boilerplate.
Awesome. So again, today we're going to be talking about some crazy stuff. And again, I know a lot of people think that this is settled and, well, it's going to be a fun show. But before we get into today's topic bomb, let me go ahead and introduce us. So I'm Ted Kabaitis. I'm a software developer. I have 17 years of SEO experience. And I do a lot of research in addition to creating SEO tools. Clint, would you like to introduce yourself?
Clint Butler, head of SEO for Over the Top SEO. I also run my own agency. I'm pretty much here to dumb everything down for normal people.
Kyle Roof. My agency is High Voltage SEO. I'm the lead SEO. I am world renowned and speak at many international conferences. And I'm the lead developer or lead math, I guess, behind Page Optimizer Pro, my on-page tool. And I'm also the lead tester for SIA, which is a testing group where we do scientific experiments on Google's algorithm.
Awesome. So I like to start these shows with a brief summary of what happened in SEO this week. So Clint, would you want to tell us what people could expect to see?
Yeah, this week we went over 5 stories. The big 2 that were really the machine learning stuff that we talked about. And the tip of the week, we looked over at some page optimization tools and which ones you should really be using and get your clients using. I think those are two of the main points for SEO this week that everyone's going to get a lot of value out of.
Awesome. Thank you. Be sure to check that out. One of the most incredible things that I found out in that episode was that Clint actually pores over more than 250 articles in the course of a week to reduce it down to those 5 summaries that he thinks matters most for the week. It's a staggering amount of information to pour through. So definitely check it out. It's very cool. All right. So our topic bomb, our meta descriptions, a ranking factor. And right off the bat, I've done a lot of speaking engagements. I've said a lot of things, and I may have to eat some of those words. I may be validated by some of those words. But it's all about the data. It's all about the testing. It's all about learning. And I'd like to point out that many times in science, people have had to make corrections. And as your understanding improves, you often have to correct your belief structure to follow suit with the new data and the better understandings. So I hope I do this topic justice. So any opening comments from you guys?
Meta descriptions are clearly not a ranking factor. Everyone in SEO knows this, Ted.
Excellent.
Yeah, you're crazy, Ted. I know what you're talking about. Meta descriptions.
All right. Well, we'll just dive right into it then. So recent testing And I know right off the bat that people's heads are going to explode with the thing we're not talking about today, which is clearly up at the top. But the thing that I want to point out is that in testing, meta description was not a factor in this case. It did not beat controls. It was no better than just an equivalent amount of keyword mention on page. Now, everybody right now is probably going, holy crap, 20 keywords in the title tag is ranking number 1 and beat controls. But keep in mind, if you do that on your website, you will get a manual action for keyword stuffing. Your competitors will narc on you to Google. So even though it does technically work, it is punishable by the Google. So don't do it. Be smart. What do you guys think about this data?
One of the tests that I ran, I want to say it was middle of last year. It could have even been before that, but it was based on a Whiteboard Friday that was 8 SEO myths that don't work anymore or something like that. Whiteboard Fridays for me have been a gold mine for test concepts. But it was the one thing was you have to write your titles for clicks, not for keywords, and that was in terms of ranking so easy to disprove. Keyword in is obviously more valuable than not. I mean, you have to have your keyword in. It's the meta title is consistently the strongest on-page factor, and leaving your keyword out is absolutely silly. But then something else that I did last year, which I also liked, was that the title tag gets clipped. Google still reads everything past the clipping. So when you're showing the 20 keywords, that probably is beyond clipped. The ellipses are cutting it out. So it makes perfect sense to me because I did prove that Google will read beyond what it's actually clipping. So you can have a title that is infinitely long and contains tons of keywords. You would actually hide it from your competitors. They would never see it because it's being clipped off. So people do rat people out. I think you could actually get away with it for quite some time.
Wow, cool hack there for the black hats in the audience. Clint, what are your thoughts on meta description not beating control?
It's interesting because in the wild I've seen different. I've ranked pages just by adding the keyword to the meta description, so I wonder if that's something to go along with adding a match to the page. Which could be possible. It might not just be that I had it in the description, but it was in the match in the code. So I think that's pretty valuable. I think it goes along with what we've all been teaching for quite some time, though, is use that meta description as a conversion point versus a ranking point. So just kind of confirms that we were on the right track.
Well, one of the ways I can spoil this test, I think I have to redo the test because I don't think this actually tested the case properly. These test cases were all for keyword stuffing. So the keywords in the meta description are exact match and back to back to back to back with no other text in the meta description. So I think if I made a more natural meta description that inserted the keyword every so many words, that would probably be a more, well, it would probably be something we need to rule out. So I think with this test, I'd call it inconclusive on meta description needs retesting, and probably just testing the meta description alone and not the other meta zones of the head block. But let's look at some other data. So many people have seen this before. This is from another tool I'm crafting. It's from a prototype rank tracker. And this is doing change detection on the Google search result. And this particular case, it tends to swap every day as Google picks a different snippet to show. The rankings go up and down based on that summary text that Google is choosing to display. I also do change detection on the pages. So when this was measured, I know that nothing else was changing on the page itself. The only thing in flux here is the snippet Google is choosing to show in the results summary. And every day it's up 3, down 3, up 3, down 3. And so I've been telling people you need to make your meta description relevant for the search term, because if you let Google A/B test snippets, you're going to add volatility into your search rankings. And this example is from business.com. If they did this site-wide, that's like 250,000 pages having extra volatility in their rankings. They would want to get that under control because that's a huge amount of variance in that daily ranking. So the reason the past year I've been telling people you need to take your meta description seriously is this field observation that Google is adjusting rankings based on what it picks for the snippet. What do you guys think of this observation?
When I first saw the tool and how you're using it and what you found here the first time you shared it, and I'm still waiting for the beta version, by the way, intent to, is I can now leave all of my meta descriptions blank, let Google A/B test, and then it'll tell me which one to put in there, and then I'll just lock it in. That's how I would leverage this right off the bat. So it kind of goes what I've seen in the wild also is adding the related terms that Google's looking for into the meta description and kind of optimizing it. So yeah, there's so many opportunities here with this tool.
What's interesting, you can see in the second one drops down the one that they have written. Looking for the best SEO software, read expert reviews, and compare features. The one that Google is choosing is probably coming from text on the page. Best SEO software suite for small businesses, SEM rushes, blah, 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 blah. And it goes on. So it's interesting that the one that they have written is not the one that Google likes at all.
Yeah, and the other thing that stood out to me was that the one that had more matches was up 3, and the one with the fewer matches was down 3. So I thought that was an interesting observation too.
And so this is where you're leading into that the meta description is a ranking factor because of the appearance of more matches in the one that Google is selecting.
But what's so interesting is it's not really meta description. It's the Google search results summary text, which is sometimes meta description, but not always meta description. So if we look at this next one, this is new data. I'm advancing Quora to the point where the community can share data. So this is data from almost 5,000 Quora reports shared together. And so I can look at the Google weather on a factor by factor basis now. So this is a new capability. But what we're looking at here is the data for the Google results summary text matches. And so what I want to point out is this page 1 average. So we have every day, and in general, we're looking at between 100 and 200 different keywords on each day. This page 1 average for the number of matches in that Google results summary text is pretty consistent. It's just 3 across the board. But then when we look at the meta description matches, it's 2. These are different things. So I find this fascinating because the thing that might be the factor is the matches in the Google result summary text. But the thing that we thought was the factor, which is the text in the meta description, is only sometimes applicable.
You're taking the wind out of my sails because I had this argument in my back pocket to throw in your face.
Now you know what it feels like.
Like this idiot hadn't figured out that it's not the meta description; it's the SERP result description.
Yeah, and you're right. The ellipsis comes into play on what the summary text can be, where it might not come into play in what's actually in the meta description tag. So it can kind of work in reverse potentially, depending upon what Google chooses to pick for that summary test. Any thoughts, Clint?
No, I'm still kind of digesting it in my puny brain right now. So
yeah, I have to apologize to Clint and Kyle. I promised to get them all the slides well in advance, and these slides are new enough that I couldn't get these past 2 slides to them in advance. So they're seeing them for the first time that you guys are seeing them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. That couldn't get them in.
Literally that new. But if you want to complain at me about these slides, it's a fair complaint because they didn't get these 2 slides in advance.
So when doing some practical application, something that I found is that if you want Google to use the meta description that you want Google to use, that you're writing, taking text from the page often makes that happen. So the concept of a lead, LDE, where you do a short summary of what you're writing about. That's where the phrase "don't bury the lead" comes from. That can be an effective way to put content at the top of your page that describes what your page is about, but they can also be used for your meta description. And in that situation, you can often, Google will then choose that because it's content coming from the page, which makes sense if you think about it from a user perspective, where you've read a description, you click on that result and you get to the page and you can't find that information. It's a very frustrating experience. So from a Google perspective and a user experience perspective, it makes sense that Google would prefer to take text that exists on the page so that they know that when somebody clicks there, they're going to get that good experience. They're going to get that information that prompted the click. But one other thing to throw in terms of practical application is that you don't have to write a meta description that's only how many ever characters, 155 to 300, whatever Google is doing that day. You can write multiple meta descriptions and that would ping for different search results. So let's say you've got 2 kind of main keywords, an A and a B. You can write 2 separate meta descriptions and Google will pull out from whichever part is most relevant. So you can actually write longer meta descriptions that aren't fitting within that certain character limit, knowing that if your page shows for a particular search result, you actually have something that is relevant to give to Google. You can put it all into just that one meta description tag. So what I would do, looking at this, where everybody else is going with 2 meta descriptions, 2 matches, if you will, within their meta description, I would go for 3, and I'd write multiple versions of my meta description to get what I want to show that's more salesy copy or click-through rate copy, but then also then takes advantage of this, where we can see that Google wants to put more matches into the SERPs. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah, that's a really good point that the keyword in the meta description was tuned to 2, and that the Google results summary that Google's trying to use on average has the 3 matches. So it seems like people are competing to a lower standard than what Google appears to want. And so, yeah, that's an interesting observation.
And if people aren't sure on how to see these, just do the search that you want and look at those bolded terms. Write them all down, pick a few, get them into your meta description.
So, good transition. Bolding behavior. And this particular example, both these results are from the same keyword search. So they're actually both from the exact same site for the exact same keyword. And they have 2 search results for that one keyword. And in one page, they get their term bolded, but for the other, it doesn't. And this was an interesting field observation to me because I think this might be a hint at MC4-like behavior, where the page that is, using it more might have triggered a demotion on those matches. So this first one here that is bolded, it's a compound match because this word also appeared with it. So it was a 2-letter match word, but these ones with it by itself didn't count, but these ones by itself did count. And the one that appears to have an over-optimization lost the bolding. And so I thought that was a fascinating behavior to come out of Google. I'm not exactly sure what it means. I'm speculating here, but these are field observations. And what do you guys think of that?
Is there a rank difference? What's the rank difference here between the two, if any?
Probably about a dozen spots.
Is the one above ranking higher?
No, the one above is the category page in a store, and the one below is a blog post that we're trying to get out of the SERPs.
But it's the one that's ranking higher, is the one that is getting the bolding?
Yeah, the one that has the bolding is ranking significantly higher.
That's interesting.
So yeah, just a field observation. We don't know what it means, but this bolding in that summary text appears to be relevant. And this is another way that your meta description might be influencing your rankings and your ability to be indexed. And it might even trigger or not trigger certain types of algorithmic demotions. So it's just, we don't know, but it's interesting. We're looking for these types of behaviors.
Could that be something as simple as styling, though, where Google's got it in where they don't want to put every other word bolded because it looks dumb?
Could be.
I was consulting in a law space on a site that was sitting at number 4, one of those like, what can we do? And playing with this, I noticed that the sites above had more bolded terms. We adjusted the meta description, and it actually the site moved up a spot. So take that for whatever you want to take it for. But I would look to see, like, if you're fewer bolded terms, I would look to see what your competitors are getting bolded and get those types of terms into your meta description.
All right. So another piece of data I like to look at is how does it correlate in keyword reports. So for this, we use Cora generally to get those factor correlations. And in general, the factors involving the summary text and the meta description, they quite commonly, not all the time, but they quite commonly correlate and strongly. So, there seems to be a little bit of statistical support for the meta descriptions correlating with rank position, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a causal effect. And again, the summary text also tends to correlate. So it's, another piece of evidence, but probably not enough evidence to call meta description definitively a ranking factor or not. What do you guys think? Jury's still out?
I like it. I like it for a lot of reasons, and it makes sense. I also it goes against the grain on just the accepted truth of what SEO is.
Yeah, I think it's definitely leaves more opportunity for testing and before you say yes or no.
Well, I want to show another interesting behavior. It's kind of unrelated, but it's a little bit related because it's another behavior involving the meta description and this Google result summary text. So this result that has all the bolded keywords, we tuned the page and we eliminated every word that Google could bold from the result. And what they chose to do was to bold a sentiment word that appeared on the page. So this I thought was fascinating. Like when I saw Google did this, it gave me chills because we had just been researching having sentiment words and titles. And here's some evidence that Google wires it into that search result summary text as well.
When you made that change, what did the position of that page drop or go up? Or
yeah, we managed to get the blog post to fall out eventually and the store category to rise above. You know, it's that classic dilemma.
Yeah.
But for a time, all Google could make bold for the blog was the sentiment word that was not part of the keywords at all. It's not a synonym, not a variation, not even a partial match. It just found that and said, well, I'll make this bold. So, yeah, another interesting observation about what's going on with that text. And, you know, another observation from the results, unrelated to the meta description, but going back to those titles, was that I noticed as well, if you eliminate everything that Google can choose to use for a title, if you keep reducing variables, Google's bottom layer, its default, well, I'll just do this, is to pull the document name. So I found it interesting, you know, where Google would go to try to pull things if you starve it of all the input. And so in this particular case, it's decided to populate the title from the document name. And I thought that was fascinating. Not really practical for any use, but another field observation of the results. So what do you guys think about meta descriptions? How would you wrap up your stance today as you see it? What do you think people should do with them?
I'm probably still in the line of put your match terms in there as much as you can, but optimize those for the conversion versus focusing on using them for rankings. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I'd look to tips earlier, but I would write to make sure that I'm getting the most relevant thing in there. And what's most relevant will often have match terms in it and the keyword phrase. So, you know, I think it's one of those intersections of good copy and SEO copy are the same thing. If you're writing something that is appropriate for that page, it should contain terms that make sense. And those terms are often the terms that Google's bolding. So I'd look to see what is available, what Google's bolding for that particular term, and I'd make sure to get those in. And looking at that data where Google seems like 3, I'd make sure that I have at least 3 of those in.
Yeah, my feeling on the matter is that if you're seeing volatility in your rankings and you're not tuning your meta descriptions, that might be the source of those ranking volatility swings. I still stand by the fact that I think it's a very important field to tune to make relevant for your search terms. But I don't know that I could call it a ranking factor with all this data. There's still not the right amount of agreement in the data and in the testing. I think we have to do more testing before we could definitively call it a factor or not a factor.
That's fair.
Well, any parting thoughts, you guys? Should we do some questions?
Do a little Q&A. We've been 30 minutes, so I think that's good. Let's wrap it up and let these fine folks get on their way.
Okay. Ted, when will your tracking tool be ready? Not for a long time. It's an absolutely massive project. So, yeah, we won't have that anytime soon. Kyle, are you split testing these 3 meta descriptions?
No, I would leave them all in.
So you're literally putting in 3 meta description tags?
If it's appropriate. So the idea would be, you've got a page that's about hard shell tacos and soft shell tacos. You can write 2 different meta descriptions, one about hard shell and one about soft shell. And then when somebody does that particular search, that description will show. So then the description that they get is most relevant to what they're actually searching for.
And last week, density ruled on the slide. Google summary has a higher density than meta description. 3 matches versus 2. Could meta description be a ranking factor with a higher density than the page? Could be. We'd have to test for that.
That's term frequency, not density, because the description length is different.
Yeah, that's true. But again, I'd say that we're still trying to figure out these fundamental behaviors. So we're doing some pretty basic science. We're not doing applied science. We're just trying to find the fundamental forces and the basic behaviors of Google. Josh Bashinsky says, my group tested exact match query and meta description and it boosted. Yeah, we're not saying that won't be the case. I think what we're saying is it's not always the case. And yeah, we just don't know enough. But yeah, we've seen that too. I think, Kyle, you mentioned that you increased the match count in meta description and saw a boost and said for what that's worth.
That's right.
And so that looks like all of the questions we have. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope your mind was blown by this episode, even though we couldn't definitively call the answer today. And, a lot of the time we can't definitively call the answer. But it's cool to look at the field observations. It's cool to look at the test data. And it's cool to go back and retest and correct the record. And so hopefully you guys got some opinions on things to look at that might help you. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think they should just rewatch the video again and then just go do some tests on some pages for themselves and see what kind of results they get. I'd be interested in hearing what everyone gets out of the, testing on live pages versus in a test environment, and just see if we can kind of put something together a little bit better and more definitive.
And if anybody wants to suggest topics, we read the comments all the time. So be sure to let us know what you think, what sucks, what could be better, what you liked, what you don't like. We pour through those comments, so be sure to let us know. And thank you again. Any parting thoughts, Kyle?
No.
Nope.
I like Clint's.
All right. Then thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Wednesday.